My dear friends, there are three words that, when put together, capture the very essence of a woman: silence, strength, and soul. When you think of silence, you may imagine emptiness. But the silence of a woman is not emptiness, it is depth. Behind her silence, there are oceans of unspoken emotions, unexpressed sacrifices, and untold wisdom. Strength is not always about how loudly you roar. Sometimes it is about how gracefully you endure. A woman's strength often shines not in the moments of applause, but in the quiet battles nobody ever sees. And then comes the soul, the essence of who she is. Beyond roles, beyond responsibilities, beyond expectations, the soul of a woman is a fountain of love, resilience, and compassion. It is this soul that holds families together, communities together, and sometimes even broken worlds together. Remember, silence without strength is suppression. Strength without soul is aggression, but when silence, strength, and soul come together, they create a woman whose presence itself is a revolution. When we hear the word silence, many people think of emptiness. They think of weakness, of someone who has nothing to say, someone who cannot speak up, or someone who chooses not to. But silence, especially in the life of a woman, is not weakness. It is often her most powerful language, her unspoken strength, her quiet wisdom. Think for a moment about the silence of a mother. She wakes up before everyone else in the house, prepares food, arranges clothes, organizes the day, and does it all without seeking applause or acknowledgement. She doesn't go around announcing, "See, I did this for you." Her silence is not because she has no words, but because her love is expressed without words. That silence is not weakness. It is depth. It is strength wrapped in humility. A woman's silence is the pause between words that teaches us how to listen. It is in her silence that she absorbs the emotions of her children, the worries of her family, the burdens of those around her. Many times, she chooses silence not because she doesn't have an answer, but because she knows an answer at the wrong time can wound. She holds back words not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Her silence says, "I understand you more than I need to correct you." That is not weakness. That is the highest level of emotional intelligence. If you observe deeply, you'll notice how silence creates space for reflection. Think of the silence of a wife when her partner is frustrated. She could argue back. She could defend herself. But sometimes she chooses silence, not because she cannot speak, but because she knows that words spoken in anger will never heal. That silence is her strength. It diffuses fire without fuel. She chooses peace over proving a point. And let's not forget the silence of a daughter, Inde. When she sacrifices her own wishes because she sees her parents struggling, she may not say anything. She may smile and say, "It's okay. I don't need it." But that silence is loaded with maturity far beyond her years. It is the silence of love, where her heart speaks louder than her lips. We live in a world that often mistakes volume for value. People who shout the loudest are seen as the strongest. But if you look closer, The most powerful people are often the ones who don't need to shout at all. Silence can command more respect than noise. A woman sitting silently in prayer, a mother silently watching over her children or a grandmother silently holding her family together with patience. These images show us that silence has a power that words can never capture. But here lies the most beautiful part. Silence is not empty, it is full. Full of emotions, full of sacrifices, full of unspoken love. It is a language beyond language. Sometimes, when a woman is silent, she is not withholding words. She is offering presence. And presence, my friends, speaks louder than words ever could. So the next time you encounter the silence of a woman, don't dismiss it as weakness. Look deeper. Behind that silence, there may be oceans of love, mountains of resilience, and skies of understanding. Her silence is her strength, and her strength is her silence. A woman's silence is often misunderstood. People see her quietness and think she has nothing to contribute, nothing to share, or perhaps even nothing to dream of. But if only one could listen beyond words, they would discover that her silence carries volumes, chapters of sacrifice, pages of wisdom, and entire libraries of experience. Think of the silence of a mother who once dreamed of pursuing her own career, her own ambitions, but quietly chose to stay back, raise her children, and dedicate her life to their growth. She doesn't speak of the opportunities she let go of, the doors she never opened, the paths she never walked. She doesn't narrate the story of her silent sacrifices every single day. Yet, in her silence rests a story of love so profound that words would only cheapen it. That silence is not empty. It is a record of her devotion. A woman's silence is also her wisdom. In so many situations, she knows the truth. She knows what is happening behind the curtain. She knows what is left unsaid in the family. She knows where the relationships are fragile and where they are strong. But often she doesn't expose everything she knows, not because she is afraid, but because she understands that some truths, if spoken at the wrong time, can shatter peace. She carries the wisdom of restraint. Her silence becomes her way of protecting the very people she loves. Think of the grandmother who sits silently in the corner of the home, watching generations unfold before her eyes. She has lived a lifetime of joys, sorrows, victories, and losses. She could advise endlessly, but often she chooses silence because she knows that every generation must live their own lessons. Her silence is not ignorance. It is wisdom disguised as patience. She has already walked through the fire. Now she allows others to feel its heat, knowing it will forge their character. And consider the silence of a sister. She may see her younger sibling making mistakes, taking risks, or even hurting her own feelings, yet she chooses silence. Her silence is a sacrifice of her own emotions because she values the bond more than the argument. She knows when to speak and, more importantly, when not to. That is her silent wisdom to guard love, even when it costs her unspoken pain. How many women have silently adjusted, compromised, and endured for the sake of others, Yet when you look at them, they don't carry bitterness in their eyes. They carry wisdom. They smile quietly, not because they don't feel the weight of sacrifice, but because they know love is heavier than pride. Their silence is not an absence of voice, it is an abundance of heart. We often celebrate the loud victories, the awards, the public recognitions, the big achievements. But hidden behind many of these victories are the silent sacrifices of women. The mother who stayed awake while her child studied, the wife who silently supported her husband's career dreams while shelving her own, the daughter who silently gave up comforts so her family could thrive. These stories are rarely told aloud, but they are written in her silence. And anyone who truly listens can read them clearly. Her silence is layered. On one layer, it is sacrifice. On another, it is wisdom. On another, it is unconditional love. To dismiss her silence is to miss her story. To listen to her silence is to hear the music of her soul. And once you hear it, you will realize her silence was never empty, it was always overflowing. When we hear the word strength, our minds often rush to images of physical power, muscles, battles, and victories won by force. But true strength is something much deeper than what can be measured on the outside. Real strength is not about how much weight you can carry in your hands, but about how much burden you can carry in your heart and still smile. It is endurance with grace, and this strength is often embodied most beautifully in a woman. Think of a mother. From the moment she carries a child in her womb, she begins a journey of strength that no textbook can define. The physical discomfort, the emotional changes, the sleepless nights, she endures them all. Yet, watch her face when she looks at her child for the first time. There is no complaint, only grace. Her strength is not just in surviving the pain, but in transforming that pain into unconditional love. That is the difference between external power and inner strength. A woman's strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet ability to keep going when no one notices. The strength to wake up each morning, prepare meals, take care of the family, balance work and home, and do it without expecting applause. The world may not clap for her, but she claps for herself silently by carrying on with dignity. Her strength is in her ability to endure without bitterness. Strength with grace means facing challenges without losing compassion. Imagine a woman who has gone through betrayal, heartbreak, or loss. She could allow these experiences to harden her heart, to make her bitter or vengeful. But instead, many women choose to remain kind. They choose to forgive when they could easily retaliate. They choose to nurture when they could abandon. That is strength. It takes far more power to forgive than to fight. To remain soft in a world that constantly demands hardness. Sometimes strength looks like patience. A woman who cares for an aging parent day after day may not receive recognition. Her life may feel paused, her own dreams delayed, but she endures with love. She doesn't announce her sacrifice, but silently radiates the strength to serve. This is not weakness. This is strength woven with grace, strength that does not break under weight, but bends gently. Like a tree in the storm, protecting those beneath its shade, there is also the strength of resilience. Many women face disappointments, dreams that didn't work out, relationships that didn't last, in the struggles that nobody else could understand. Yet they rise again, they rebuild their lives they recreate themselves, they move forward without carrying resentment as baggage. Their strength is not about never falling. It is about rising each time with a heart still capable of love. Grace makes all the difference. Endurance without grace can look like mere survival, a heavy and joyless existence. But endurance with grace becomes inspiration. When you see a woman smiling, even through her storms, comforting others, while quietly carrying her own struggles, or spreading hope when life has given her every reason to despair, that is true strength. Strength is not measured in volume or in display. It is measured in the quiet ability to keep moving forward, to hold others up, and to do it with a heart that is still tender. That kind of strength does not roar, it shines. And when strength is carried with grace, it becomes not just survival, but a legacy of love. Strength often wears a quiet face. It doesn't always stand on a stage. It doesn't always hold a microphone. It doesn't always receive applause. Sometimes, strength is hidden in the everyday rhythm of life, in the unnoticed acts of love, and in the countless responsibilities that are carried without expectation of recognition. A woman's strength is often this invisible strength, the kind that continues even when no one notices. Think of the woman who wakes up before everyone else. She prepares the meals, sets the home in order, ensures her family is ready for the day. Nobody thanks her for rising before dawn. Nobody claps when the chores are done. By the time the day truly begins for others, she has already lived half of hers. Her strength is not in being noticed, but in continuing day after day with the same dedication, whether or not anyone sees. Strength is in the working woman who juggles office deadlines and family responsibilities. She puts in long hours at work, then comes home to take care of her children or her parents. Nobody may write about her in the newspapers. Nobody may give her awards for managing the impossible balance, but she continues. She may collapse into bed with exhaustion, but the next day she rises again. Her strength is not for display. It is for love. Think of the countless sacrifices women make silently. A daughter who gives up her own desires because the family cannot afford them. A wife who adjusts to her partner's world, sometimes putting aside her own comforts. A mother who gives the best portion of the meal to her children, pretending she isn't hungry. None of these moments are recorded in history books. They pass unnoticed, uncelebrated. But they are not small. They are strength. Strength that chooses to give without being seen. A woman's strength is also in her ability to endure pain without broadcasting it. How many women carry emotional wounds, heartbreaks, or disappointments, yet still greet the world with a smile, She may cry silently at night, but in the morning, she puts on courage like a garment and walks forward. Nobody may know the depth of what she is carrying, but she keeps going. That is not weakness. That is strength of the highest order. Even in families, her presence is often taken for granted. The meals appear on the table. The clothes are cleaned. The home runs smoothly, and people assume it is all automatic. But behind that order is her invisible labor, her uncelebrated effort. She doesn't need recognition to continue. Her strength is in consistency, in showing up, in giving, in nurturing day after day, whether or not anyone says thank you. True strength is never about being noticed. In fact, some of the greatest strength is invisible. Like the roots of a tree, unseen but holding everything above firmly in place. A woman's unseen strength sustains entire families, entire communities. Just because it isn't visible doesn't mean it isn't powerful. Sometimes the most powerful things are the ones nobody sees. And so, a woman's strength shines brightest, not under the spotlight, but in the shadows, when she continues even when no one notices. That is where her greatness lies, in being able to give, to endure, and to keep moving forward, not for recognition, but for love. The soul of a woman is her deepest essence, the part of her that exists beyond names, beyond titles, beyond the many roles that life places upon her. Society often tries to define her only as a daughter, a wife, a mother, a caretaker, a professional. These roles are real and they are important. But the truth is, her soul is much greater than any role. Her truest self cannot be contained within expectations, responsibilities, or labels. It flows freely, like a river that refuses to be bound. Think of a woman who has been called many things in her life. She is such a good daughter. She is such a devoted wife. She is such a caring mother. While these words are compliments, they are not the full story. They describe what she does for others, not who she truly is. Beyond all these roles, she is a soul, an individual, a dreamer, a seeker of meaning. To see only her roles is to miss her essence. To see her soul is to see her humanity. The soul of a woman is where her creativity is born. It is the place from which she writes poetry, paints pictures, sings songs, or simply dreams of a world different from the one she sees. Even when she is burdened with responsibilities, her soul quietly whispers to her, "You are more than what you do. You are more than what people expect of you. You are you." And in those moments, she feels connected to her truest self. Her soul is also where her resilience lives. A woman may face disappointments, unfair treatment, or limitations placed upon her by society, yet her soul cannot be chained. Even when her external world tells her, "You can't," her soul keeps saying, "Yes, you can." That inner voice gives her the courage to stand again, to hope again, to dream again. The soul of a woman is not defined by her circumstances. It rises above them. Think of the countless women who carried heavy burdens, but still smiled, still created, still nurtured. What kept them going was not merely duty, but the strength of their soul. A soul that knows love is stronger than hate. A soul that knows hope is stronger than despair. A soul that knows kindness is stronger than cruelty. These truths are written in the very fabric of her being. Sometimes her soul shines in small, quiet ways, in the way she comforts a child with just a glance, in the way she encourages someone with just a few words, in the way she silently prays for the well-being of her loved ones. These may seem ordinary acts, but they come from the extraordinary depth of her soul. And when her soul is seen, when it is honored beyond her roles, something beautiful happens. She blossoms. She feels valued not only for what she does, but for who she is. The soul of a woman longs to be recognized not just as a function in someone else's life, but as a complete being with her own dreams, her own voice, her own light. Her truest self is her soul, free, radiant, and limitless. When we look at a woman not just as a role she fulfills, but as the soul she truly is, we begin to see her not as ordinary, but as extraordinary. Because beyond all expectations, beyond all responsibilities, she is a soul shining in her own right. Within the soul of a woman lies a power that is subtle yet extraordinary, a power that heals, nurtures, and inspires. It is not the kind of power that demands attention or seeks dominance. Rather, it is a quiet force that restores broken spirits, uplifts weary hearts, and gives courage to those who feel they have none left. When you look deeply, you realize her soul is not just her own. It becomes a shelter, a sanctuary, a source of strength for everyone around her. Think of how a woman heals, not only in physical ways, but in emotional ones. A child runs into the house crying after a fall, and it is the gentle touch of a mother's hand, the soothing tone of her voice, that makes the pain fade quicker than any medicine could. She doesn't just heal the wound on the skin, she heals the fear in the heart. That power flows not from her hands, but from her soul. It is an invisible energy of compassion that restores balance where there was pain. Her nurturing is equally remarkable. A woman doesn't just provide food, shelter, or comfort. She nourishes the spirit. She knows when someone is silent, not because they are fine, but because they are breaking inside. She knows when a simple word of encouragement can make a difference. In her presence, people feel cared for, seen, and valued. That is the power of nurturing, not just tending to needs, but nourishing the essence of another's being. And this power often comes so naturally to her that she doesn't even realize how extraordinary it is. And then there is inspiration. A woman inspires not always by grand speeches or dramatic actions, but by the way she lives her everyday life. A daughter watching her mother sacrifice for the family learns the meaning of resilience. A friend watching her companion stand tall through adversity learns the meaning of courage. A child watching his grandmother pray faithfully every day learns the meaning of hope. Her soul does not preach. It simply radiates values that inspire others without a single word. Her soul has the power to heal conflicts as well. How many times has a family argument been softened by the calming presence of a woman who refuses to add fire to fire? Instead, she adds water, patience, and understanding. She may not always be able to solve every problem, but her ability to hold space, to listen, and to comfort makes others feel safe enough to move forward. That is healing in its purest form. This power is not limited to the home. In workplaces, communities, and even in society at large, women bring the same qualities of healing, nurturing, and inspiring. A teacher who believes in her students when no one else does heals their self-doubt. A leader who encourages collaboration instead of competition nurtures harmony. An artist who pours her soul into her work inspires generations, whether quietly or openly. Her soul is always creating ripples of positive change. The beauty of this power is that it is effortless. She doesn't force it. She doesn't calculate it. She doesn't need recognition for it. It flows naturally from her soul because compassion, love, and resilience are woven into her very being. And those who come in contact with her, family, friends, colleagues, even strangers, carry pieces of her influence long after she is gone. So when we say her soul carries the power to heal, nurture, and inspire, it is not a poetic exaggeration. It is the truth. It is a power that has held families together, lifted societies, and changed countless lives. And often, she does all of this without even realizing just how powerful she truly is. Silence on its own can be misunderstood as weakness, and strength on its own can sometimes appear harsh or aggressive. But when silence and strength come together within a woman, something remarkable is born: resilience. Resilience is not just the ability to survive difficulties, but to endure them with dignity, to bend without breaking, to rise again after every fall. And this resilience is often the unseen fabric of a woman's life. Consider the countless women who silently endure challenges that many would crumble under. A woman may face financial struggles, a strained relationship, or the pain of unfulfilled dreams. Yet, she does not allow these struggles to define her. She endures with quiet strength, refusing to let bitterness consume her heart. Her silence is not passive. It is active endurance. Her strength is not loud, it is steady. Together, they create resilience, a force more powerful than either one alone. Think of a widow who loses her partner early in life. The grief is overwhelming, and the silence of her nights is heavy with loneliness. But she chooses to continue for the sake of her children. She works, sacrifices, and builds a life for them. She doesn't go around telling the world how strong she is. Instead, she silently bears the pain, channeling her strength into her responsibilities. That quiet courage is resilience. She bends under the storm, but refuses to break. Or think of a young woman starting her career in a world that doubts her abilities. She may hear discouraging words, face dismissals, and encounter barriers at every step. She doesn't respond with arguments or complaints. She lets her work, her dedication, and her persistence speak for her. Her silence shields her from negativity, and her strength pushes her forward. Together, they create resilience, the ability to thrive in the very space where others expected her to fail. Resilience is not only about enduring struggles, but also about transforming them. A woman's silence allows her to reflect, to find meaning in her experiences, to gather inner wisdom. Her strength gives her the will to act, to rise, to keep moving forward. Combined, these qualities turn her pain into growth, her struggles into lessons, and her scars into symbols of victory. This is why resilient women often carry an aura of depth. They have lived storms without letting the storms live in them. Sometimes resilience shows itself in the smallest acts. A woman who loses her job but wakes up the next morning to apply again. A mother whose child fails an exam but gently encourages him instead of losing hope. A grandmother who suffers illness but still blesses her family with a smile. These little acts may not look like great victories, but they are resilience in action. Because resilience is not about never falling, it is about never refusing to rise. And here lies the beauty. Resilience is not loud, it is not boastful, it does not announce itself. It is often invisible, recognized only in hindsight. People may look at a woman and say, "She makes it look so easy." But what they don't see is the silent strength behind her composure, the resilience she has cultivated through countless trials. Silence gives her the patience to endure. Strength gives her the courage to continue. Together, they weave resilience into the very core of her being. And it is this resilience that allows her not just to survive storms, but to walk through them with grace, leaving behind a trail of inspiration for others to follow. Strength is a beautiful quality, but when left unguided, it can sometimes turn into force, dominance, or even aggression. True strength, however, is never meant to crush. It is meant to uplift. When a woman's strength is guided by her soul, her inner wisdom, her compassion, her sense of love, it transforms into something extraordinary. It ceases to be raw power and becomes gentle power, the kind that heals, unites, and inspires rather than intimidates. Think of a mother correcting her child. She has the authority to be harsh, to scold, to demand obedience through fear. But most mothers choose a different path. They guide with firmness, but also with tenderness. Their strength is not in frightening the child into obedience, but in shaping the child with compassion. That balance comes from the soul. It softens strength into guidance, making it effective without being destructive. Consider women in leadership roles. A woman leading a team can demand results through authority, instilling fear in her employees. But many choose to lead differently. They lead with empathy, listening to challenges, encouraging growth, and correcting with patience. Their strength is still there. It enforces discipline, maintains direction, but it is colored by compassion. This combination creates loyalty, respect, and genuine motivation, something aggression could never achieve. Strength without soul can create walls. It can intimidate, it can control, but it cannot inspire love. A woman's soul, however, adds a dimension to strength that turns it into a bridge rather than a barrier. Her soul teaches her when to be firm and when to be gentle, when to stand tall and when to bend in kindness. This balance makes her strength not only powerful but also deeply human. Think of history, of countless women who endured oppression, hardship, and injustice. Many of them rose with strength, but it was their soul that guided that strength. Instead of becoming bitter, they chose compassion. They fought for justice, not just for themselves, but for others. They transformed their pain into empathy for those who suffered the same struggles. This is the highest form of strength, one that is used not to dominate, but to uplift. Even in personal relationships, this truth shines. A woman may be strong enough to win every argument, to have the last word, to prove her point every time. But guided by her soul, she sometimes chooses silence, chooses peace, chooses understanding over victory. It is not because she is weak. It is because her compassion values the relationship more than the ego. Her strength is still intact, but her soul directs it toward love. The beauty of strength guided by soul is that it never loses its firmness, but it gains grace. Like steel covered in velvet, it is unbreakable yet gentle to touch. It stands firm when needed, but does not wound unnecessarily. That is why people often find comfort in the presence of such women. They feel safe, protected, and loved all at once. Aggression can force obedience, but compassion earns trust. Aggression can silence others, but compassion gives them a voice. Aggression ends with fear, but compassion lives on as love. When strength is guided by soul, it becomes something eternal. It creates change not through force, but through inspiration. And this is why a woman's strength, when channeled by her soul, becomes not just power but purpose. It is not used to break down but to build up. It is not used to intimidate but to inspire. It is strength at its highest, noblest form, the strength of compassion.